Daphne Gale is a singer-songwriter with a sound at once new and familiar, sophisticated but uncluttered. Daphne's jazz, folk, indie pop style seamlessly frames her smoky voice and stirring acoustic guitar. Writing from the moment she could get her hands on a cassette recorder, Gale continues to share her music, commanding melodies with lyrical sincerity and telling stories with resonance. Hello, Daphne. Welcome to the New Music Alliance Radio Hour.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
You just released your album No Matter on July 23rd. You noted that it's about belonging, displacement, and departure. Could you tell me a little
Yeah,
bit more?
sure. This is an album that is the uh, manifestation of a lot of hours spent in a lot of different places and a lot of travel and both emotional and physical transformations. So, yeah, I wrote a lot of the music about a year ago. I'd say I wrote the bulk of the music that ended up on the album in Vermont. I found myself back on the East Coast after moving out to the West Coast to start pursuing my music more seriously. Back on the East Coast, helping to pack up my family's childhood home. And so, right from the get go, I was feeling really topsy turvy and a little bit out of place. And that became the spark of inspiration for a lot of songwriting. And then I ended up going back to LA and doing some more writing, starting to record in my room and realizing that really wasn't going to cut it. And around that time, I had been in contact with a really good friend of mine who was working on his production more and more. His name's Chris Peters. And he said, well, I realized I had a lot of songs and no place to record them. And he realized he had a lot of recording equipment and no songs of his that he wanted to be working on. So he said, okay, well, let's do something about this. And we ended up calling up a couple of our friends, convincing them to be in on this project with us and meeting somewhere in the middle, which was New Mexico, a little closer for me, but somewhere in the middle to rent a space for 2 months and live there and build our own recording studio to make all the music come to life. So I guess No Matter and all the themes that are in the music speak to a place I was, they speak to an internal feeling of displacement and unsettledness. And yet they also spurred a series of decisions and chapters that in turn felt really unsettled as well, but in a more physical, tangible way, because I ended up moving from LA to New Mexico, back to LA to San Francisco to Colorado. And so there's been a lot of travel in my life. And I like that it reflects what the material that I wrote so long ago is about as well.
I noticed that you had several people contributing on your album, No Matter, but it's not really kind of a separate band. It's just your work, solo work. But I noticed that the songs that did have other people contributing, it kind of took a slightly different approach, like Pika Pika with Johnny Gilmore, Early 20-something featuring Brendan Jacob Smith and Julia Gargano, and Day Job featuring Chris Peters and Kenyon Duncan. Do you see yourself forming a band one day, or do you kind of like this, just piecing things together as you go?
Gosh, yeah, it's so funny. I spent most of my high school and college years wishing I could be in a band. And I was sort of in a band or two in different ways. And always kicking myself for not being in one and looking at other people, friends of mine who were in bands, being like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? Somewhere I think in the isolation. At the same time, I know I'm a super picky person, and it's taken a little while musically, I guess in other ways too, but it's taken me a little while to come to terms with that because I don't always love to compromise my musical vision. And especially as a songwriter, it's important to be honest with yourself about when and how that manifests. So, especially in the time that I was songwriting and making things in my room for myself by myself, uh, I didn't intend to, I didn't even see performing any of it. So I didn't imagine a band. And then when I got the opportunity to bring this music to life in a recorded way, uh, there was this awesome thing that happened where I realized so many of my friends are amazing musicians, and I love working with other musicians. Uh, but everyone was also at home and didn't have that much to do. And so I was reconnecting with all these friends of mine, and I said, "Hey, I would just sort of indulge every little idea I had." And same with Chris, who I was working with. Um, and we would say, "Well, who would maybe sound awesome on this?" No, like she wouldn't do it. And then we would, like, whoever said that, the other person would go, "Well, just reach out and see what happens."
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was really cool to have all these different collaborators who brought so many different styles to the table. And at the same time, I love having that freedom. And so I think right now it's cool to get to bop around musically, um, and sort of date around, I guess, in that way. Um,
This approach seems to be working for you, so I think you should continue doing it.
oh, thank you. But I also do. There's a not small part of me that wants to have a girl band with two other singers because I think that would be really cool. And I have some people in mind, but
Awesome. I was gonna say, who would you like to collaborate with someday? Like famous people or
mm, yeah, I have a serious girl crush, music crush on Madison Cunningham. I think her music is amazing, um, and I think we would just get along musically really well. And I love what she does as a vocalist and songwriter and guitarist. So um, definitely someone I've been wanting to work with for a while now.
well,
Um,
you've been at a festival now, so maybe in future festivals, maybe you'll bump into her one day. You never know.
yeah, that would be super cool.
Tell me
Yeah,
about Telluride. You performed there in June this year.
yeah, I did. Um, I got to. I was by far the least experienced mandolin player to play on the festival stage that weekend. But it was crazy to know that I was sharing the stage with, Chris Thiele and Sierra Hall and Sam Bush and all these incredible mandolin players.
Wow.
And just so many, in general, so many musicians I admire and have been um, inspired by over the years. Uh, so, and also just yeah, that whole festival is a really, really incredible community that's so supportive, um, in a way that I hadn't experienced musically in years past or in communities past.
Hmm.
So a definite a definite, like, I don't know, memento, and a feeling memento that I want to hold on to as I go back um to the rest of the musical world that's not always as kind.
It does seem like the artists at festivals like that really do come together and collaborate, at least to talk to each other and get inspired from each other. So it's great that you had
Yeah.
an experience.
Yeah, there's such a cool spirit of collaboration. And I don't know if the Newport Folk Fest was the same way, or if general, yeah, I don't know what it was, but there was something so magical about um that group of musicians, because there was this energy of, like, getting people to jump on stage and jamming with whoever was around, and uh oh, like, let's come up with this arrangement and try it out tomorrow, just very off the cuff in a totally responsible and yet super musical, authentic, in the moment way.
That's very common at the Newport Folk Festival. In fact, Chris Thiele joined Lake Street Dive on when they were up on stage.
Oh, you're lying. Yeah. Chris Thiele is, I mean, he's another person that I have dreamed of collaborating with. He's just such an incredible musical chameleon, and yet someone who has obviously his own distinct style. And just, I feel like everything he touches
very
turns
distinct.
to gold. Yeah.
And I noticed you recently posted on social media that you posted what you've been listening to lately, and I noticed that Chris Thiele was on there with God is Magic and no,
God is Alive.
God is Alive
Magic
and
is
Magic
Afoot,
is
yeah.
Afoot, which he performed at Newport Folk Festival.
Right. Yeah. So he was also at Telluride Jazz, Telluride Folk, wow, Telluride Bluegrass. And so I got to see him perform lay songs for the first time for a live audience, and also saw him play with the Punch Brothers like 3 times that weekend. So I feel like I'm just so psyched on Chris and all of his projects these days. Yeah, that album's so cool. And yeah, I just can't speak highly enough of him.
Tell me about No Matter, which is also a cool album.
Yeah, what else do you want to know?
Early 20-something. It's an interesting look into the life of a young adult. I love the line, under meditated, over medicated.
Yeah.
Is that personal experience?
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of these songs took quite a bit of editing. I've thought a lot about process in my songwriting over the years, as I try to treat it more like a practice and a muscle, rather than sort of just I'll do it when it feels right sort of thing. Because I think just the more I write, the more I want to keep writing and feel better about my ability to express the things I want to. Anyways, all that to say that sometimes my writing, sometimes I'll write a song and then in the days and weeks after go through this editing process. And for early 20-something, I was listening to this podcast with St. Vincent. I don't know if you like her work. I think she's awesome. And she was talking about life in her early 20s and just trying to figure things out. And it was really hitting me. And I was on this walk and I ended up just sitting down on the side of the road and writing down some lyrics, and they became early 20-something and without really any changes. So I was really happy about that. And I feel pretty connected to those lyrics because of how little revision there was around them. But yeah, I hope it's a song and a set of lyrics that resonate with people, because it's just stressful being young and trying to, in my experience, it's tricky being young and trying to pursue a thing where there feels like there's no real clear path or means of stacking yourself up and checking every now and again, like, have I gotten anywhere? So
which for an early 20-something you might be ahead of the game. And I think a lot of early 20s maybe don't think forward that much. I was going to ask, do you see where you want to be in 5 years?
In some ways, and in others, I hope to be somewhere I couldn't have imagined. I definitely have more music that I want recorded and more venues I want to play at, and plans and dreams to tour really as far around as I can. And a sort of longer list of collaborators that I would love to be in an orbit with by the time I'm, I don't know, 5 years down the line. So
excellent. We recently played Twin Flames on the New Music Alliance Radio Hour, which
cool.
was also on No Matter. Can you tell me a little bit about that song?
Yeah, so that song is one of the only ones that wasn't fully recorded on my end in New Mexico. Um, I I ended up, or I had the pleasure of working with a friend of mine, Charlie Hickey, who is out in LA, and we really just connected on this song. And he has such a beautiful uh, musical style and vision of his own. He's a really wonderful songwriter. If you ever check his music out, um, and I just loved the way he was playing everything. And so I said, "Do you want to record this with me?" And he's like, "Oh yeah." And so we both recorded separately in Los Angeles on that one. And then it was the first thing that we worked on in New Mexico as sort of a way of breaking in the studio that we'd set up. Because we're like, okay, we have all the stems. All we have to do is add some fun stuff in and around. And at the time, it was just two guitars and two voices, me and Charlie's. And we really thought we weren't gonna add that much to the tune, but before I knew it, we were throwing, and I think it's all subtle, so hopefully it doesn't take away from the heart of the song, which is an acoustic vocal and guitar song. But Chris he like spent a whole day in his room, and he like wouldn't let me see what he was working on. And I was like, well, what's going on? And eventually he let me listen, and he'd recorded these recorders and pitched them down and turned them into a drone and sort of affected them weirdly. And so they became this whole bed of this song that is so subtle. I don't think you would really notice it in most spots, but it just added this extra like richness and color to the song. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then we were like, okay, what else can we do? And so one of our friends, Kenyon, who was staying in the house with us, it's like, I play percussion. And they're like, oh, what? You didn't tell us that. And Kenyon's simultaneously one of the most talented and most humble people I know. So on one hand, we were like, we've never heard you say that you play percussion before. And on the other hand, he doesn't say he plays something unless he can play the crap out of that thing. And so, which you heard because he sings on Day Job. And so we're like, okay. And he just laid down track after track on all like any kitchen instrument he could find. And he had this conga hone. And before we knew it, we were like, this sounds awesome. And then we also got everyone in the house to hum and be like a vocal drone that we also added in there. So it was a really fun track to work on, which was especially cool because it's sort of a delicate, sensitive subject matter. So it was nice to reframe the memory of that song, because as songwriters, sometimes it's weird to have to go back and forth and travel back to a place of hurt or pain if that's where the song came from. But now I think about that song and I think about all the fun I had decking it out with all the people in that house together. So
That's great that you can do that. Did you also record that song by yourself before No Matter?
Yeah, well, just sort of a demo voice memo, but never professionally, officially,
Gotcha.
or released it anywhere.
You're young, you're talented. Have you ever wanted to take a chance and go on one of those shows like American Idol or The Voice?
Oh, wow. Well, thank you. I've thought about it, and I have some good friends that have done it and are in the process of doing it. And I've heard mixed reviews. I think for the right person and the right people, it can be the perfect platform. And for others, it can end up typecasting you in a way that is less than ideal. So I'm definitely not crossing out the possibility entirely, but right now I feel like I have a good sense of the type of artist I am and want to be. and would want to make sure that that vision doesn't get compromised by an external force. So
Are you ready? Do you want to play a quick game real quick?
yeah, I love games, but
All right. Lyrical
only if I can
pondering.
win.
It's lyrical ponderings. I'm going to give you
Okay.
the name of a song that is in the form of a question. You can either tell me who sang the song, or if you don't know, you have to answer the question.
Okay.
So pick a number between 1 and 200.
10.
Oh, will you love me tomorrow?
Oh, this is really, I can sing it. Will you still love me tomorrow? It's a classic,
Beautiful.
right? It's an
That
oldie.
is a
Yeah.
classic. I wouldn't have known the who sang it either, but we're all familiar with that song. That was by the
Okay.
Shirelles.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that.
You did an excellent job. Daphne Gale, thank you so much for joining us on the New Music Alliance. And you're going to be performing at Acoustic Cool on August 7th, which is a house
Yeah.
concert in Bristol. Paul and Diane are wonderful hosts, and I think you're going to have an amazing time there.
I'm so excited. Yeah. And thanks so much for having me again.
All right. Thank you, Daphne. Best of luck to you.
Thank you. Have a good one.